Hi everyone, Lar from Complete Test Success here, and today we're just doing a Q&A. So pretty straightforward. If you have any questions or any problems with the IELTS test, just let me know what your questions are, let me know what your problems are, and I will give you whatever advice you need to make sure that you can overcome those issues. That's pretty much what we're doing today. So yeah. And while I'm waiting for questions to come through, let me just share my free live feedback lessons with you guys here. So those of you who've been following me for a while, you'll know about these already. So these are free lessons, group lessons on Zoom every week. So for those of you who are new, I'll just point those out. I know a lot of you are aware of these already. So if you'd like to get involved in these lessons, I cover all parts of the IELTS test: reading, writing, listening, speaking, the whole thing. And just click on that link to sign up, and then you'll see the schedule and the links to join. Hi, Domenico. Good to see you here. Hi, Jad. I'm doing good. Thanks for asking, Jad. Hi, Baljeet. Doing good. Thank you. And Lou, good afternoon. Hello. Welcome to the lesson. Okay. So what questions do you have for me today? What problems are you experiencing? What questions, what confusion do you have? What have I been up to? Not a great deal. Not a lot, to be honest. Trying to do a bit of exercise after I moved to Ireland. My face started to balloon a bit, getting all the old snacks and treats that I grew up with. So yeah, trying to do a bit of exercise and then just working. That's pretty much it. Nothing too exciting. How to write task 1. So for task 1, what I would do is kind of consider it as 4 types of question. You'll get maps, so you need to know how to address that. You might get a process, so you'll need to know how to address that. And then they're basically, I would divide graphs into 2 types. So what you'll see, like very often, like you'll see there are, tables, pie charts, line graphs, bar graphs, multiple charts. So you can get a mixture of types of graphs, but ultimately what's important is how many points in time are shown on the graph. So if it's, over time, so like, for example, a line graph, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you can kind of see what happened to each category. Then you'll talk about whether the categories increased or decreased. So that's when there's more than one point in time, but sometimes there'll be only one point in time. So, it might show you, what is the situation now? And in that case, there are no increases and decreases. So, you can't talk about increases and decreases if you're not shown any. So in that case, you'll need to talk about the highest and lowest values for those. That's in particular for the overview. And that's how that would be the most basic categorization of task 1. So that's for the overview especially. So ultimately then you paraphrase the question, write your overview following the 4 types of question I've described. And then you need to write the details paragraphs where you need to mention the specific things that happened. If you don't include all the key features, you'll end up with a band 4 for task achievement. So, like if you just, like again, if it's a line graph and you just mention the first and the last but there's something important in the middle, that can get you a low score. Or if it's a map or a process, if you don't include everything, that can get you a band 4. So like, let's say if you're looking at a map and there's like one change that you forgot to include, that can actually result in a band 4. So not including all the key features. So overviews would be the first most important thing. Including all the information would be just as important, but not as difficult. And then what surprisingly a lot of candidates get wrong is that they include inaccurate information. It seems so simple, but you know, if the chart says 5% and you write down 8%, that will limit you to a band 6, even for one mistake like that in task achievement. So those are kind of the typical things where students kind of find it tough to get right, especially at the beginning when they're starting. But the good thing about task 1, especially for academic, I've only been talking about academic. The good thing about task 1 is the vocab and the grammar is very repetitive. So you can really learn a lot of the language that you will need in a way that you can't for any other part of the IELTS test. If you're doing academic IELTS, you can really prepare for the vocab and the grammar. And it's very, very wise to do that, because you know, you can't do that. You can't do that for any other part of the test. There's no other part, like, you know, reading, writing, task 2, listening, speaking. You have no idea what you need to discuss. So you can't really prepare language in the way you can for task 1. So make sure to take advantage of that. Baljit. In reading, I find answers easily. Which questions are not tricky, but for tricky one, I get confused. Okay, so you're trying to analyze your mistakes, and at the moment, you're not analyzing them appropriately. So you're saying when it's difficult, you can't do it. But you need to be more specific, because at the moment, with the information you have, there's nothing you can do to improve. The question is too difficult. What you need to do is you need to analyze more deeply than that. Why is it difficult? Why do you think it's difficult? And with the answer to that question, you should be able to figure out what you're doing wrong and how you would improve your scores. So, for example, it might be, and very likely it will be, you know, it's too difficult because you don't understand the text. Why don't you understand the text? Well, maybe your vocabulary level isn't good enough. Maybe it's, you know, the grammatical structures. So understanding that, you know, you're not getting enough answers correct because your vocab is too weak, well, the solution is to go and study vocabulary. Now, most students will continue just doing more and more and more reading tests because they think, well, I want to improve my reading score, therefore I need to continue doing reading tests, that it'll just magically get better. But it's not getting better if the problem is vocab. The only way it gets better is improving your vocab. So if that's the case, and it might not be, but once you analyze your mistake and find out what the problem is, for example, maybe vocab, it's very likely that you will stop doing reading tests completely, focus on improving your vocab for, you know, however long, like a few weeks, few months, come back to the reading test, and you'll find that you get more right after that. So you need to figure out more specifically why you are finding answers tricky. And the answer to that question will show you what you must focus on to improve. You feel me on that one? Lub, I did a lot of practice reading. Almost I read all 17 books of Cambridge, but struggling to improve. I'm hanging between 17 and 22 in each test. What to do, sir? So this is the exact same situation, Lub, as we've talked about here with Baljit. And I actually said exactly that a lot of students just do more and more and more reading tests, and that's not the solution. So what you need to do is go back and analyze your mistakes and figure out what have you been doing wrong. Why did you get the other answers incorrect? Each one very specifically. I'd recommend two things. Write down the question type. So maybe you'll notice that it's one or two question types that you're getting wrong all the time. And that might mean that your approach to those question types, you know, your strategy or the way you try to answer them that might be the problem. So for each incorrect answer, write down the question type so that you can get a feel for if that's an issue. And the other thing then is more specifically, like, did you, the question said write 2 words and a number, but you wrote down 3 words, and that's why you got it wrong. So maybe you need to, read the instructions more carefully. Or maybe you made a lot of spelling mistakes, and the problem is you're not careful enough with your spelling, or you need to improve your spelling. So just look out for the exact things that you're doing wrong. And once you make a list, so just do for one practice test, make a list of every mistake you've made. And if you analyze it properly, you should know what you need to do to improve. Now, with the students on my course, we do this together. So, they'll make out the list, they'll send it to me, we'll go through it, we'll make sure that, they do understand what they must do to improve. But most often, the mistake that my students make when they're analyzing their answers is kind of what Baljeet has here. So just saying, like, it's too difficult. So they'll have too vague a reason for their mistake. And because the idea is vague, we don't know what's necessary to improve. So normally in that situation, it will be go back to the reading test, analyze it more deeply, and then, we'll get the information we need. Yeah, so that's basically what you need to do. The thing that worries me that you've done all 17 books is now when you need to do more practice. So let's say the problem is vocabulary. Once you make that improvement in your vocab and you go back and you try to analyze, is your reading good enough? Is your score good enough yet? You've done all the tests already. And now, doing a test the second time isn't going to give you an accurate reflection, because you'll remember some of the answers. Even if you remember 5 of the answers, that's enough to make the score you get invalid, and not to reflect the real score you're capable of. So yeah, I think you're going to have to find new reading tests published by Cambridge. There are 1 or 2 books available. You'll find them online. So that, they have the Cambridge 1 to 17, they have the series, but there are some other books, like another 2 or 3 books where you will find reading tests published by Cambridge, but you need to use those far more wisely. You can't just do them all very quickly. You need to, work a lot on improving your problems, then do another test, work a lot on improving your problems, and do another test. So don't use them all up, because you really do need them as part of the process of improving. Brothers Gaming, hi there. How to improve reading. So we've just talked about that, but as well, let me just share you a link from my website, because a lot of you are asking about reading today. So let me just share this link. Let's call it how to improve reading. So if you just go down to the comments, the newest comment there. So I've just made this comment and that link. So that will give you more detail about reading, just because it seems like something that a lot of you are kind of having problems with today. Domenico, I've been on a diet for about 2 months. I had a bit of a problem eating too much junk food, which led me to balloon last year. It happens so easily. Yeah, I was even looking, like, there's YouTube videos that I made about this time last year when I was still in Vietnam. And my face, it feels like my face would fit inside about 60% of my face now. It's just like they're 2 different size faces. I got a bit of a shock there. I was just on like my YouTube channel, and I saw one of my new videos next to one of my old ones, and I could see the difference. It happened quickly. Okay. Although my personal trainer is Italian, he's able to speak English with a perfect American accent. So I asked him to speak with me in English while I'm working out at the gym. Brilliant. I mean, every opportunity you can get will help. I was just talking to one of my students earlier today, and they were looking to improve their fluency. They're speaking 2 or 3 hours every day. to improve their fluency. But your fluency comes from how quickly your brain can react in English. That's a lot of it. The best practice you can do to improve your fluency is to speak in English as much as possible. But the fact is, like reading, writing, listening, speaking, like the more you do in English, the better your fluency gets. So even in a lesser way, if you're reading in English every day, that will help your fluency because your brain is, able to operate in English. Your brain is able to find the vocab and, put the ideas together more quickly. And what you'll find as well, it doesn't really take that long, but if you're immersed in an English speaking environment, you'll start to think in English automatically without even trying. And once you're able to think in English, I mean that does wonders for your fluency, because obviously there's that translation that goes on for a lot of students when they're still at lower level, and especially when their fluency is at a lower level. Once you start to get that ability to think in English, it really improves everything. That's brilliant. That's great. So you're basically getting two for one with your trainer. Hi, Alva. What's the appropriate time for planning for writing? It depends where you are in the process. I mean, if it's your very first time doing it, I'd say, like, if it takes you 45 minutes, just that's okay. If you're getting used to the process, if you're not used to checking for relevant ideas, if you're not used to checking for specific ideas, if you find idea generation to be difficult, it's okay if it takes a long time to start with. By the time you get to the test, you should be able to plan your essay in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less. So, by the time you get to your test, say 5 minutes for planning, 30 minutes for writing, and then, about 5 minutes to check your writing. But if you're just starting and it's something new, don't put yourself under pressure to do it all in 5 minutes, because then you're not giving yourself a chance to develop the skills that you need. So yeah, it just depends on where you are in the process. Earlier on, give yourself more time. Closer to test date, you need to be able to get it down to about 5 minutes. Preet, to all the students, you guys are on track if you are following Lar's advice. Thank you. Domenico, he's kind of helping me to associate the activity I do every day with my target language. As far as I'm concerned, I had a bit of a problem generating ideas in English because of my vocab. That would be a big thing. Like if you have an idea but you don't have the vocab to communicate it, that's obviously not gonna work. So yeah, but the thing then is there's a difference between not having the vocabulary and not being able to think of the vocab. Those are different things as well. Good. Sounds like you have a good situation there, Domenico. Hi, Sasha. Welcome. Good. Glad to hear it, Sasha. Memorizing, yeah, it takes a while. It takes for a while for a word to become memorized. Like that's why when we're learning vocabulary, we need a notebook. Like, why do you need a notebook? You need a notebook because for sure you're going to forget the word. If you weren't going to forget the word, you wouldn't need a notebook. The fact that you write it down in a notebook is admitting that you're going to forget. I think that's probably the most boring part of learning vocab is reviewing the notebook, because there's a nice sense of achievement. You're going out, you're finding the words, you're finding what it means, you're adding it to a notebook. It feels like you've done something, but it's pretty much useless unless you review it again and again and again and again and learn it. So it takes time. Sasha, one question, please. Is it okay to use informal words like phrasal verbs in task 2, or does it lower the score? You should not use informal vocab in your IELTS writing task 2. but not all phrasal verbs are informal. Like some of them will be neutral. So you will hear some teachers will just say, as a general rule, don't use phrasal verbs, because it's a simple point. If I'm trying to teach you and I say don't use phrasal verbs, it's very simple. It's not a complicated thing for students to understand and to follow. But not all phrasal verbs are informal. So it just depends on the phrasal verb you use. There are many phrasal verbs that are absolutely fine for the IELTS test. So yeah, definitely a lot of phrasal verbs are informal, but not all. So don't just avoid phrasal verbs. What you really need to do is learn if the phrases are in fact formal or informal when you're if they're formal or informal when you are learning the vocab. Yeah. Okay, seems like I'm not getting any comments from Facebook. Maybe Facebook isn't working. Give me just 1 second there, please, and I'll have a quick look. Oh, it's working, just no one's interested. Okay, and Sasha, excuse me, Sasha. My second question is, can we use brackets in task 1, like putting the numbers inside brackets? Is that wrong? I don't do it. The short answer is don't do it. Because what you need to do is you need to use, like, perhaps if you're using a bracket, it's because you need to use a comma and a preposition and then the percentage and then another comma. So what you're doing is, instead of using the appropriate grammatical structures, you're avoiding them by just using brackets. So it's helping you to avoid make mistakes, but it's also reducing your range, and it's reducing your opportunities to show what you're capable of. So no, I say don't do it. It won't improve your score as much as using the correct grammar. It'll limit the range that you've used. There is no vocab for speaking. It's like it's not like a vocab test where you go to your school and your teacher gives you 20 words and then you learn the 20 words and the teacher checks if you know the 20 words. Like you can get 10 out of 10. You can get 100% correct. The IELTS test is testing all of the words. So it's not just testing some words, it's testing all of them, every word in the English language. So it's like, do you know all the words? And nobody knows all the words. So I mean, that's not realistic. But like when you communicate, are you using the appropriate word for the appropriate situation? Are you using it accurately? So there are no special words. There is no special vocab for the IELTS speaking test. You're using the normal vocab that's used in the English language when people communicate in English. So it's not like, outside on the street, there's one type of vocabulary and in the IELTS test, there's another type of vocabulary. That's not what's happening. It's just the English language. So if you need to improve your vocab, you just need to study vocab. If you need to improve your vocab score, you just need to study vocab. But what you can do is you can focus on topics that you're not familiar with. So it might be like, I work with a lot of, professionals in the health sector, like, doctors and nurses and stuff. And when they're talking about health, their vocabulary is fantastic, but then they need to talk about the environment and they have no vocab. So, in that situation, what you're doing is pay attention to which topics you find it difficult to discuss. So if it's in the speaking test, or if it's in, like IELTS writing task 2, there's a topic where you're just going like, I don't have any of the vocab I need to discuss this topic. Make a note of that topic and start to research and study vocab for that topic. Besides that, it's just about, studying more and more and more and more, learning more and more. But try to learn normal words that everybody uses. Don't try to learn, special IELTS vocab. He's teaching me a lot of casual English as well as advanced words which related to exercise I do at the gym. Perfect. Good. My current score is 5.5 in speaking. So Baljit, you're saying that you need to improve, or that you want me to share vocab, but are you sure that vocab is your problem? Are you getting 5.5 because maybe it's your pronunciation? Like, you don't know. Like, you're getting a 5.5, but that might be, you might be getting 6 for fluency, 6 for vocab, 6 for grammar, and 5 for pronunciation. So maybe studying vocab isn't the fastest way of improving. Maybe studying pronunciation or improving your pronunciation, maybe that's what you need to do. So, like, getting your speaking analyzed, finding out exactly what mistakes you're making so that you can actually, improve your score with the least amount of effort and the least amount of time, it's very valuable to have that information. If it was the case that you're like 6, 6, 6, 5, to go from a 6 to a 7 in vocab would be a lot more work than to go from a 5 to a 6 in pronunciation. Like, each step is a bigger, to go from a 5 to a 6 in any band is going to be easier than going from a 6 to a 7 in any band. They're each just one band, but the steps get bigger as you go up along. Look, if you were in Pakistan, you would be richer than a qualified lawyer. Here in Pakistan, almost all teachers just teach the pattern and hacks which are useless. I'm proud to learn from you. Thanks, Loop. Thank you very much. Sasha, good. You're very welcome. Nishani, sir, when we answer the question in listening section, should we use articles? I mean, real garden. It depends on the grammar of the question, the grammatical structures of the question. So the question will determine whether you need the article or not. But if you see the answer key written like this, so it says in brackets, so like a real garden, that means if you write a real garden, you'll get the mark. Or if you write real garden, you'll get the mark. So when they put a word in brackets, that means if you include the word, that's okay, or if you don't include the words, that's also okay. So it's just showing the option. So real garden or a real garden are both acceptable when they put the word in brackets. Or again, send the newsletters is correct and send newsletters is correct. So it just depends. You should know from the grammatical structure of the question whether you need one or not. So the information you need is based on how the question is written. But also be careful with, if it says, like, let's say, go back to this one, a real garden. If the question said no more than 2 words and a number, well, then you're not going to write a real garden if it said just 2 words. So be careful with that as well. So you might think like a real garden is the right answer, but then you're only allowed 2 words, so you'll just write real garden. So you have to look at the structure of the question, but also the instructions to make sure you write the correct answer. Abu, sir, if there are only 2 years in task 2, then how to stop repeating them again and again? At the start, at the beginning, at the end, it finished with. Take a look on my website. I have like a load of sample answers. You'll find all the various ways of saying those things. It began with, at the start, it had, there are many different ways that you can paraphrase like that. So initially it was difficult for me to describe how I performed the type of sit-up called crunch, but now it's like getting my second nature. I tell you, you're doing more exercise than me anyway, Domenico. I'm just going for walks. I'm barely getting out of my seat compared to you. What is today's topic? Kumar, we're just doing a Q&A. So any questions you have or any problems you have, just let me know. Yep, so just a Q&A today, Kumar. Don't need to go like line your back on the floor, lift your upper body towards your knees. This phrase contains vocabulary that I already knew but wasn't able to use. Yeah, so you're learning the collocations and how they all fit together. Good. Baljeet, sir, can you give me some chance for one-to-one speaking with you? So I think it helps me a lot to guide me which mistakes stop for achieving six band. Yep, absolutely. So I have one-on-one corrections and I have IELTS courses. So what you can do is you can purchase just one practice speaking test with me, or on the course I have, more comprehensive, lessons showing you what to do, multiple one-on-one speaking tests and workshops. So I'll just share this link with you. You'll find these here. So here, one-on-one corrections and IELTS courses. So just click on that link there and you will see those services there, Baljeet. Lub, sir, can we write the writing task 1 and 2 in pencil? Where I worked, yes, a lot of the candidates wrote in pencil, but also where I worked, the test center, we gave the candidates pens and pencils. They were able to choose. So where we were, the stationery, the pens and pencils were given to the candidates. But then in other test centers, you're required to bring that stuff with you. So it's actually not fixed. It depends on your test center. So the best thing to do is ask the test center where you're doing the test. The thing I noticed though about students who want to write in pencil, they're very particular about their writing. Generally, students who write in pencil, they want their writing to look very nice, and that's not part of your IELTS score. So yeah, the only thing about pencil is it's actually slower, because people, they write the wrong word and then they get the eraser and erase it and try to make it look nice. But people with pen, you make a mistake, you just put a line through it and continue, which you can also do with pencil. But generally, people with pencil will spend more time trying to make the writing look nice, and it's not necessary. So that would be generally when I hear people asking about using pencil, I worry that they're going to waste time on having it look nice. Also, what we see sometimes with students who are writing in pen, they make a mistake and they try to get every little bit so that nobody can see what the mistake was. But it doesn't matter. Like if you make a spelling mistake, put a line through it and spell it correctly, the examiner's not going to look at what's behind the line. Like the line means ignore this, and the examiner will ignore it. So it doesn't need to look nice. Or sometimes you've been writing and you need to put in an extra word, so you need to write it kind of smaller up between the word and the top of the line. Again, it doesn't matter. Like that's normal. That when people write with a pen, that's what writing normally looks like. I think in the West, handwriting in the West isn't as nice as in other countries. We don't value the appearance of handwriting as much as other countries. So for an examiner to see an ugly piece of writing, it doesn't matter as long as they can read it. If it's unclear, that's a problem, but it doesn't need to look nice. That's not necessary. Kumar, one question I have: sometimes 3 words answer in writing and sometimes we can't fit in answer sheet. What we can do in this case, please? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Can you give me more information about this, Kumar? I'm happy to help, but I'm not sure what you mean at the moment. Hi, Babu. Is it okay to repeat words like but, and, which, and so many times. You can use them more than once. Like many times would be a problem. Like overuse of cohesive devices will get you a band 5. So if you're just using and, like, you know, overuse is a problem. But it's not that you can only use them one time, and especially words like and, because, you know, those words, you need them. So if you need them more than once, don't worry about it. But if you don't have a range of cohesive devices and you end up using the same ones over and over and over, but that is a problem. Nishani, you're very welcome. Okay, Balji, okay. Sir, can you please give us feedback in process and map questions in your coming live feedback? Yes. Give me a second. Yeah, so my previous task 1 live stream was based on a map. The next one's going to be a map and a map. Yeah, so I have a few maps coming up, and processes will be later down the line. But yeah, maps are coming up soon. Or already. I had one already, and the next 2 will be maps as well. But isn't it difficult for examiner to read through a lot of strikeouts? No, not at all, because that's how we write. That's how we write normally. It won't be a problem. The examiner genuinely won't care. And if they do care, it doesn't affect your score. So even if some examiner, I can't imagine why they would, but even if they do, it's not part of the band descriptors, you know. So it's definitely not something to worry about. The problem is that I had a lot of passive vocabulary, but I never got to use it. What could I do to activate more and more vocab when I'm at home? You know, not living in an English-speaking environment, so really challenging for me to use vocab. I learn every day. It takes a while for vocab to become active, and very often it's not really like a conscious decision. It's more by getting familiar enough with the word, and very often you'll become familiar with it by reading. So, you know, the more you read, the more familiar you will be with the piece of vocabulary, and it just kind of comes out at the right place at the right time when you're ready to use it. So, you know, very often it's not about forcing the word, but it's just about continuing to review and continuing to read and continuing to listen and giving your brain just a chance to process it all and kind of go through the process of understanding it deeply enough and being familiar enough with it that you can recall it when you need it. So very often it's not so much about going, you know, today I'm going to use this word, because you might not have the opportunity, or, you know, the conversation might not present itself. So yeah, you can definitely use it to help you remember, but about using it accurately and appropriately and fluently, you know, that's just about becoming more and more familiar. And reading is a massive, massive part of improving your vocab, even if you're not using it yourself, but it just gives you that extra, exposure to the word and helps you to get familiar enough that you can use it. Nishani, sir, for speaking in part 2, should we add if clause, when clause, at least 4 or 3 linking words, future tense, 1 idiom? No, that it's not as mechanical. It's not as mechanical as that. You don't need to use an if clause. You need to use complex structures, and one type of complex structure is an if clause. But that does not mean you need to use an if clause. You might, you know, somebody would get a very high score by using lots of complex structures. And it might be the case that none of their answers had an if clause. So, you know, the examiner is not listening for specific, like, oh, there's an if clause, tick. There's a when clause, tick. Oh, how many linking words? You know, they're not analyzing it in that way. But what they're paying attention to is like, okay, that was a complex structure. Okay, that was a different one. That was the same one again. okay, no, there's a range there. I can hear the range. Okay, and like they're kind of listening out for accuracy. Like there's a mistake in that sentence. That sentence had no mistake. There's another 2 sentences with mistakes. Okay, that's not going to be a band 7. So it's kind of like checking, is there the range there for a higher score? And now is there the accuracy there? And kind of combining those 2 things. So it's not, the examiner's not listening for specific types of grammar, just looking for, are you using complex structures? Are you using a range? And then, outside of that, is there, the other, like, are you using modals? Are you using tenses correctly? Like, are you using prepositions correctly? Are your articles right? So just like the frequency of mistakes and the type of mistakes. So it's not analyzed the way you've described here. That's not what the examiner's doing. Sir, tell us about the speaking through video call. Which one is better, face-to-face or video call, if someone have anxiety like me? Well, it depends on your own, like, what are you more comfortable with? Because it's the same process. You go to the test center, you sit in the waiting room, you get called, you sit down, the examiner asks you questions, you answer them. Like, do you feel you would be less intimidated if the person was in a video call? It just depends on how you would react to that situation yourself. So, like, different things make us anxious. The things that make you anxious are different things that will make me anxious. So that's more of a personal thing. I wouldn't say that we would all have the same reaction to the video or the face-to-face. So I think you'd really have that information more than I would, to be honest. But just have a think, what would you be more comfortable with yourself? Thank you, sir. For example, my personal trainer often gets me to read articles about health, and while I'm doing my workout, he asks me what information I got from the text to help me remember. Good. Sounds like a real double benefit. Maybe he should add that to his profile. I'm sure a lot of people would want that. Babu, sir, can we only rely on Cambridge books for practice? And does it have the same pattern as it comes in the IELTS exam? Yes. Yep. Yes, to both of those questions, yes, definitely. Hi, Salik. I've watched all your speaking practice interviews on YouTube, which helped me a lot. I'm able to obtain 8 in speaking section by following the strategies of you. Fantastic. Well done, Salik. Well done. That's a big achievement. Brilliant. Delighted. Thanks for the message. And congratulations, Salik. That's brilliant. Sasha, what are some books you recommend for someone aiming for 6 or 7 band? You just need to figure out what you're doing wrong and improve on those areas. So it's not necessarily any specific books. It's just about it's just about fixing your mistakes. Find out what you're doing wrong. You'll need the Cambridge books for reading and listening, but besides that, it's just about, if you need to improve your vocab, if you need to improve your task achievement, if you need to improve your coherence and cohesion, like just finding out what you're doing wrong and fixing those mistakes. So I wouldn't really say there are any specific books that I'd recommend. Nishani, you're very welcome. Domenico, this undoubtedly helped me, and he realized that I'm a quick learner, and in fact, he said that it's just a matter of activating my vocabulary because he found my grammar good. This is brilliant, Domenico. You have a great situation for yourself there. Sasha, no problem. You're very welcome. Okay, so that seems to be it. No more questions here by the looks of it. Lou, good. Glad to hear it. Okay, so that's it for today. I have live feedback lesson tomorrow. So like I said, if you haven't signed up already, you can use the link in the video description. And I'll also be back next week with another live stream. But yeah, that's it for today. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Best of luck to those of you doing IELTS test, and Salik, congratulations. That's great news. Bye-bye, everybody.